Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1268 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Season 4 of Yes, We Are Open, the award-winning podcast from Moneris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. The Moment Lab, brand marketing and strategy, PR, advertising and production. You need the Moment Lab. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of this community since 1921. Today, returning to Toronto Mic'd to kick out the jams, is Michael Grange. Welcome back, Michael.
I'm impressed that you, I don't know if I'm impressed or concerned that you still have to read that word for word. Like you've done it 1,300 times. You'd think you might just have it memorized.
You'd think so.
Or maybe even have it drop, like you just press something.
See, that, I wouldn't do that. See, that's interesting because, a lot of podcasters would pre-record it and drop it in. I do it live every time because to me, that's all part of the experience. This is all live to tape, Michael. Come on. Right. I refuse to do the pre-record, but welcome back. It's a little smoky out there today.
It is.
When Smokey sings. Is that one of your jams, When Smokey Sings?
It's not, no. But it's kind of like I was saying to my son, it's kind of a nice smell. It's like campfire smell. You just don't want it for 24 hours.
Right.
A couple of hours of campfire smell.
I'm with you. And I actually like it when I go camping. I camp every year with the kids. And I like it that I get the smoke in my hair.
Sure,
and I can smell
your
it.
Flannel shirt.
Yeah. And I like that. You're right. I do like the smell of campfire. But I don't really want to bike through it for an hour and or a half. It is enough is enough. Let's
let's get the fans on.
Keep it special. Okay. I'm actually going to stop talking to you, Michael Grange, because I have pledged to get to the first jam right away. We'll catch up between jams. So I have but one question for you.
Listening.
Are you ready to kick out the jams?
I am ready to kick out the jams.
I want to know who my representing in here tonight. Hold on.
I keep letting you back in. How can I explain myself? You said you cared for me better.
Louisiana. Murder on the beat. Something for y'all to cut up to, Yeah. Everybody get your roll on. I know shorty and she doesn't want no slow song. Had a man last year, life goes on. Haven't let the thing loose, girl, in so long. You been inside, know you like to lay low. I've been peeping what you bringing to the table. Working hard, girl, everything paid for. First, last phone bill, car, no cable. With your phone out, gotta hit them angles. With your phone out, snapping like you Fable. And you showing off, but it's alright. And you showing off, but it's alright. It's a short life, yeah.
Shot out of a cannon, Michael. Drake, nice for what? Talk to me.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, doing what I do, covering the Raptors as I have, Drake is kind of ubiquitous, right? But this song I wanted to include, first of all, let me say, these are my top 10 or 11 songs, but they're probably not, tomorrow it could be another top 10
it's
or 11.
Fluid.
Right. But
of course.
But this one, and I wanted to include because I have a little pet argument that I feel, given the generations I span, I'm not old, just those generations I span.
Careful, because I doubt you're much older than I am, but please continue.
I feel like I'm well positioned to argue that this is actually a Springsteen song.
Whoa!
Yeah, and
Wow.
and given I certainly wouldn't be the first or last sports writer to be on here and have a Springsteen song in there, kick out the jams. I'm sure, and I am a huge Springsteen fan. I'm not casting any aspersions. I could have had a top 10 Springsteen song list.
Right.
But when this song hit, I mean, obviously it's an awesome song. It is my favorite.
It's catchy AF.
Yeah, it is for sure my favorite Drake song. And but as I kind of listen to it more and more, it's like when you go back to like old Springsteen stuff, and it's like we're waiting for the weekend, we're gonna jump in our car, we're gonna go and shed our whatever concerns are of the week, and have a dream come true type thing. Not to put and I think it was okay. So if you fast forward 40 years. What would that sound like? Well, it'd be about a woman, not a guy. Right. It would be about, a single mom. It'd be about, working overtime, get the car gassed up, your phone bill's paid for, all that struggle that so many people have to go through. And then they're looking for an opportunity to cut loose, and they don't care what some guy's going to tell them or some dude online is going to slag them or whatever it might be. They're just going to go and be for themselves and their friends. And once I kind of made that connection, I just thought this is an unbelievable song. And so this is my token Springsteen song in my top 10.
I think it's Eric Corrine who would say that's quite the hot take. I think hot take.
It's not that hot. I think I'm 100% accurate. Okay. And I've had this discussion with Eric Corrine, I think. And so there we go.
Okay, so
I don't think a lot of Drake fans are in position maybe to make that connection.
I love it. No, this has already been stellar. This kick out the jams. I could stop right now, and it's still going to be great. But as a Raptor guy who covers the Raptors, and Drake, of course, the
ubiquitous, not really ubiquitous, but when he's there, sometimes his music is there all the time. His
music's there all the time, and he's there when the going's good. I noticed.
Right? He's been there a few times in the rough times. I'm not going to go down.
But have you had any one-on-one conversations with Drake?
We are going to touch on some of my experiences with some of the people on this list, or the artists on this list. I have not had a one-on-one interaction with Drake. I've been in a couple of scrums with Drake. I guess my favorite Drake reference would be I used to work out at a gym where Drake's bodyguard worked out. And Drake's bodyguard, and all I really wanted to ask him, I was terrified too, obviously, was... Like this guy was about 6'2", maybe 275. Like he was enormous.
Right.
And he also had tattoos all over his shaved head. And I just felt that was extra. Like, I mean, you're terrifying. Now you're really, really terrifying. I didn't have the chance to bring it up.
Yeah, it's almost.
I'm sure he's a great guy.
I'm sure he's like one of those cuddly, soft spots. Yeah, but that's almost like above and beyond. Like you're already intimidating. We don't need the tats on the.
So
on the
skull. Once when Drake was getting escorted off, and this buddy was doing the escorting, I was like, I almost did the, hey, I know you from the gym, and no, it wasn't the time.
All right, so I'm gonna let the listenership know this is not the we're used to the initial visit by somebody. We do like an A to Z. We walk through the bio, okay? So you've been here, done that. I don't know if you bought the T-shirt, but you were here, and I was looking at the time you were here. You were here March 2019, which is significant. We'll get back to that in a minute. But here's what I wrote at the time. That was episode 442. In this 442nd episode, Mike chats with Sportsnet's Michael Grange about his years writing for the Globe and Mail, his work at Sportsnet covering basketball. RJ Barrett was on the agenda, and the Toronto Raptors and more. And spoiler alert, only a few months after we talked. Well, firstly, I'm wearing my I'm wearing my Kawhi Leonard The Shot T-shirt because that hadn't happened yet when you were on the show. And also, flags fly forever. We won, man.
That was amazing. That was an amazing season, amazing year, amazing playoff run. Definitely career highlight, and maybe me being on your podcast was somehow responsible.
I'm feeling that. I think for sure. I will say that there was that double overtime game against the Bucks, I want to say, where
Yes, game 3.
Right, and we would have gone down 3-0 if we lost that game. And it was close. And we did pull it off in double overtime. The next morning, like bright and early, like 9 a.m. the next morning, Leo Rowdens dropped by for his initial deep dive. And it was like, yeah, and there's like a convergence. It's just that 2019 pre-pandemic. So we got to all, there's no thoughts of any, a million of us could gather for the parade.
We were going to die of something else back then.
We were going to what? Sorry?
We were going to die of something else back then.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to die of like smoke inhalation when smoke is in your eyes. Hey,
hundreds of ways.
100 ways to die. Okay, let's get to jam number 2. And again, between these jams, we'll catch up. I have some gifts for you. I have a gift for you that you probably already have, but we'll get to that later. Spoiler alert. Let's kick out jam number 2.
This dream where I relished the fray and the screaming filled my head all day. It was as though I'd been spit here, settled into the pocket of a lighthouse on some rocky socket off the coast of France, dear. One afternoon, 4,000 men died in the water here, and 500 more were thrashing madly as parasites mine in your blood. Now I was in a lifeboat designed for
Every time I kick out this fantastic hip song, I realize there is no verse, chorus, verse structure to this song. Like, there's actually no natural place to fade down. Talk to me about the tragically hip and nautical disaster.
Yeah. Well, there's no way I was going to get through this without a hip entry. And again, could have been many. And I will say this.
Yeah.
I feel incredibly lucky that I was kind of in that, that whole music thing that was happening in Toronto, but really Canada, sort of late 80s to mid 90s, maybe 2000, and it's interesting having kids who are that age now and how different their musical experience is. And we'll kind of get to that. But anyway, so this song in particular I chose, and I have tons of hip stories, so don't let me go on too long. But
you have 3 hours. Go ahead.
I think it was summer of 95. I know it was summer of 95. I was working at the Globe. It was my first year there. I was a summer intern. I just finished school, and I was my girlfriend then, now wife, had an apartment right at Spadina and Queen, and I was very strategically and conveniently located. And the Globe back then, you didn't start till 10 a.m., which was awesome for my drinking.
Nice. Yeah.
There were many mornings, and in this case a weekday morning, we'd kind of stumble out of there at whatever 9 a.m. and there's a coffee place right at the corner, southeast corner of Queen and Spadina, almost like directly across from the Horseshoe Tavern. And so bleary-eyed coming out there one morning, I'm like, why is there a lineup of people outside the Horseshoe Tavern? And so I wandered over. Why is there a lineup of people? Well, the Hip were having a spot. What do they call it now? Like a spontaneous concert. What's that word?
I don't know.
Like
a spontaneous concert.
There's a word for it now on the internet. But anyway, they were doing a
pop-up.
Pop-up. That's what they were doing, and it was like a rehearsal for their upcoming tour.
Right.
And I was like, wow, cool. So I got in line. I must have commissioned my wife to go and call other friends because we didn't have cell phones then.
Right.
And so a handful of us that lived around there got the word, got in line. I'm going to imagine it was Jake Gold actually who gave me the wristband. Might not be true, but I think it was somebody, one of their
It's
like
FOTM Jake Gold. Okay?
yeah, it was one of their like long-term management type people, and then came back that night for at that time like I'd seen the Hip, and I could go on forever, but
Yeah.
like the first time I ever saw the Hip, I think was like summer of '87.
That's early for the Hip.
Yeah, upstairs at the Elmo because I had a degenerate friend from Mount A where I went to school, who had gone to school at I think lower, whatever private school, one of the I don't know, might have been Paul Sinclair. I think went to one of them, and so it was his buddy's band. He should check these guys out, and so that summer '87, I saw them in Now magazine upstairs at the Elmo. I go, sure. I wander over by myself. I didn't make a big deal of it, and again was living around the corner.
Yeah,
and get in there, and they were terrible. I was like, this.
Were they doing like I would envision like Van Morrison
they were
covers,
past
like
the covers,
okay.
but the joke of it is that wasn't the band. That was the opening band,
Gotcha.
and so the Hip come on like an hour later, and they were
phew.
incredible. And
but just for a little perspective for those who aren't as into the Hip as you and I are, like Up to Here, which is where the normies clue in with
Right.
Up to Here, and that doesn't get released till '89. Like
Right.
that's when I'm hearing it on Q107. Oh, Blow It High Do. Whoa, what the hell is this? I got to get this disc, and then I'm in love with the Hip. But if you're on board like before Up to Here, you're a Hip OG. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
I mean, and again going back to what a lucky era it was.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of.
It's the Highway Girl era, right?
Yeah, Highway Girl, and there was like the whole college music scene at that time was really huge. That's why some of these bands we'll talk about were able to exist, and so they would come to Sackville, New Brunswick, and play. I saw them play in a dining hall that would sit 400 people at what we would call a beer garden, and I remember them doing Boots and Hearts and like looking in. Yeah, they're all wearing boots, you know. And
one of my all-time favorite Hip songs. Is
there's a lot of choices.
21 if you include the fact that we
That would have been one. Three Pistols would have been another one.
Yeah.
And anyway, so yeah, had a long history seeing them in all the relevant bars around the city. But by this summer '95, they were huge, right? Like they were. I hadn't seen
Fully
them.
Completely's out by then, right?
Yeah,
That's,
it was. This was Day for Night. This was so they were prepping for the tour to support Day for Night.
So is this
95.
before or after the Saturday Night Live appearance?
It was the same
era.
I'm going to say it probably was after, but it was same era.
Same period, right.
And so you couldn't see them in a bar anymore.
No.
It was unless you
went to the States.
Right. And so I stumble. My point is, I stumble into this thing. Wow. It's at the Horseshoe Tavern. I probably hadn't seen it at the Horseshoe for like 5 years.
Right.
And it was amazing. And I remember this song, and it's not quite a beat drop, but there's that build up, and then
it's an excellent song. Like I literally got goose pimples.
Yeah, and what I
Disaster.
remember now, I remember both at that show.
Yeah.
That kind of the whole crowd jumping as one.
Right.
Once
it's like waves, right?
Yeah.
It all
like
fits
once
in with me.
the drum comes in.
So years later, I'm sorry.
And then I remember seeing them.
I thought I was
Hamilton
kicking out the jams here for a minute. Sorry, keep going.
at Cops, which was the last show I saw on that tour, or the only of their farewell tour.
Oh, Man Machine Poem. What is it called?
No, it was when their farewell tour.
Yeah, I think that tour was called like Man Machine Poem.
Oh, was it? Okay,
I think.
thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
And anyway, and the same thing, except it's 20,000 people 30 years later or 25 years later, and so.
Did you cry at that concert?
No, but I remember the next morning after watching the concert, the final concert, and just being, pretty, pretty messed up, and going somewhere with my dog, and it was like the whole city was asleep still, and just being really, and what I reflected on is, because of so many factors, not just their brilliance, but also the nature of the music industry at that time, the nature of the Canadian music scene at that time, how we had seen something that will never probably be repeated. And it, you talk about Drake, you talk about The Weeknd, you talk about so many of these artists who their first, I'm sure people, there's OGs who are kind of onto them in their communities early. I'm not suggesting that doesn't happen,
right?
But their rocket ship is in the States. And whereas, for some of these artists, it was possible to have that organic, homegrown thing. And then for Gord Downie in particular to be such a freak show talent, and then for obviously the tragic way it ended, it's just like an epic movie, And I have one Gord Downey story.
I was about to ask.
Among many, and I do have some good ones. But so I think it was in '93, and I had to write down some of these dates. But before I started the Globe, I was a welfare worker. I worked for the City of Toronto, and I worked at an office showing how the city's changed. The office at the time was at Dovercourt College, which then was kind of a little rough neighborhood.
Right.
And and this was pre-Starbucks. And so you'd get your coffee at this little Korean-owned variety store next door. And I'd go in there, and maybe, once a week, I would run into Gord Downey. And because he lived in an apartment across the street.
Wow.
And, I introduced myself, and it was a totally low-key environment, obviously. It was literally one of those tiny little Korean shops that are like...
They call those bodegas?
Yeah, in New York. Here we call them variety stores.
We're taking that term. Okay.
But, a little 12 by 12 shop, and they'd have the coffee in the glass urn there, and Gord and I would have our coffee, and, we'd chit-chat. And one day... he says, listen, why don't you come across to the apartment and, I want you to listen to something. And I'm like, okay. And so we go across, and I'm going to imagine there's at least one or two other guys from the band there. And he plays a recording of The Hip covering Limelight by Rush, which was turned in, so they were practicing for Rush's, not induction to the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, but it was some tribute at the Junos that year.
Sure.
And so I was like,
dude, that's an amazing story.
Yeah,
have one-on-one conversations with Gord Downey.
Yeah, and he could have been nicer. And I was like, yeah, that's great, Gord. That's really good. And then, I think pretty soon after that, he moved back out to Kingston on some farm that he was, whatever. But
wow. So it's recently as what is this, early June. So just before the Victoria Day long weekend in late May, I kicked out hip jams with a couple of big hip jams, like your ideal summer long weekend hip songs. And we played 10, what we deemed the best 10 hip songs for a long weekend. You can't separate a long weekend in Canada from the Tragically Hip's catalog. And one of the great jams for a long weekend in Canada is Bob Cajun, in which Gord references those checkerboard floors from the Horseshoe Tavern.
Yeah. One of my favorite spots literally on the planet. And, during the pandemic, I just wanted to go back there so badly.
I love that spot too.
Yeah.
I guess we'll tease it and I won't mention the band, but there is a band coming up that I've seen many times at the Horseshoe Tavern, and just thinking about December, seeing near Christmas, you're seeing this band at the Horseshoe. I can't wait to get to that. I actually love your jams. We're going to get to all of them, but thank you for kicking out some Tragically Hip and sharing your story about Gord. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. And if you have any more Gord stories, by the way, I would make time for them.
I'm just trying to think. Oh, and so the last one is the bookend to the whole thing was I was covering the NHL lockout for Sportsnet in the summer of 2012, which I recognized was just because none of the NHL guys wanted to be anywhere near it because they knew it wasn't going to get resolved till November or December. So I was the sucker. Okay, literally, I would go to New York and on an open ticket and just stand around on the sidewalk for hours and days. But I have a good friend who lives down there, and he let me know the Hip were playing, and it was their 25th anniversary year. And we saw them. I don't know the name of the venue, but it was about a 1,200 person venue, like a kind of a warehouse type space.
Amazing.
And I hadn't seen them at that time for probably 10, 12 years.
Wow.
I just kind of
you got busy.
I was a parent and, and it was incredible. All of a sudden I was 25 years and they were pulling songs from every conceivable corner, nailing them. It was, and it was funny because of the locker, there was all these NHL people around. It was a pretty fun night, but that was, and then the whole experience of, once Gord got sick and just experienced, you really dove back into them and recognized that, no, it wasn't just you as a kid. It was no, this is a special thing. There you go. That's all I got.
You had me at hello. Okay. So I realize now when I was teasing that band I love seeing at Horseshoe Tavern. It's actually the next
There we
song.
go.
But here, you
Easy.
mentioned drinking. You get to start at 10 a.m. because you got a good time drinking. I'm going to send you home today, Mr. Grange, with some fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery.
I'm very happy about that.
Delicious beer. Thank you, Great Lakes, for supporting the program. And
It is good beer.
no, it's legit. Like,
Yeah.
I know they pay you to say that. Like,
They don't pay me to say
they
it.
don't pay
I
Michael
like it.
Grange to say it. They don't give him a dime, but they do give him some beer. But yeah, it's fantastic. Enjoy that. And while I'm giving you some fresh craft beer, I want you to know that you're taking home with you a large frozen lasagna from Palma Pasta. I don't know. And did you get a lasagna in 2019?
I did, and it was awesome. And I
Yeah, well, you're
love
getting
it.
another one,
Yeah,
man.
I'm very excited.
It's funny, my guest yesterday was proudly of Italian descent and telling me how her mom cooks this lasagna. She's going to review the Palma Pasta lasagna from Miss Rita DeMontis, for those who haven't listened yet. And I can't wait for her review, but most people will tell me it's the best lasagna you can buy in a store. So thank you, Palma Pasta. One quick hip note. I've seen them, I think I saw them 13 times in total. I went to that final show. They had 3 shows in Toronto. I was at the middle show because we had a road trip. We were actually going to Prince Edward Island, and I ended up seeing, just for what it's worth, I was in Ingonish, Nova Scotia in Cape Breton when the final show aired, and I watched it with my family there. And I remember weeping while I watched that final show. There's some lines just hit differently. Like, this isn't no dress rehearsal. This is our life, I guess. Head by a century. But I will say, so I was seeing the hip many times live, and one song I never saw live was 38 Years Old, which is a song I loved from Up to Here. I loved 38 Years Old, but they never played it live. But finally, I don't know, 2012 or so, I saw them at Fort York. So I'm at Fort York. I see the Tragically Hip. I'm wearing my Bill Barilko jersey. It's a nice summer night. And they break into 38 Years
Wow.
Old. And it turns out they rarely, for whatever reason, they just never played 38 Years Old. But I saw it there at Fort York, so you can, check that off the bucket list or whatever. And yeah, love that band. I miss that band. I also love this band. Let's kick it.
I know you're just trying to please me. Don't you know that it's alright? I know you will never leave me. Don't you know that it's alright and it's alright? Yeah, it's alright. I know you're just trying to squeeze me. Don't you know that it's alright? I know you would never deceive me. Don't you know that it's alright? You should know I'm not forgetting what you've done. You should know I'm not forgiving you at alright. It's alright. I know you're just trying to tease me. Don't you know that it's alright? I know you will never believe me. Don't you know that it's alright and it's alright?
That voice belongs to an FOTM, Michael. Talk to me about the Skydiggers.
Wow. So, not to make this always all about me, but
Well, it is all about you. Honestly, this is literally all about you and your love of music.
So as I was, of these bands, I'd say the one I've kind of returned to more regularly would be the Skydiggers, in part because they have this fantastic show around Christmas time.
Yes.
And it was last time was at the Danforth. Last few times at Danforth Music Hall. A little bit disappointed about that. Not gonna lie.
Right. Me
But
too.
if you if you can fill that place twice versus the Horseshoe 3 times, I get it.
Yeah.
And and so you go see them around Christmas time, and it was like a reunion. You just see so many people you would know, and as I kind of got into them, they kind of started a little bit later than Blue Rodeo or the Hip, and I think I got into them through my girlfriend at the time, who was a dancer, like a modern dance professional.
Okay.
And one of the people she worked with was, at the time, I don't know what their status is now. I shouldn't even speculate. Is I really don't know, but it's been forever. But it was Andy Mays' wife, Andrea, and so I would kind of get into them, and I just think that they're amazing. Like they have like their first 4 albums, you kind of go through them, and there's, they're just gem after gem after gem. And I was kind of looking up, when I was doing this, I was like, kind of just trying to refresh my memory. And it turns out like their first 4 record labels all went bankrupt.
Yeah. Okay. So there is an episode of Toronto Mike of Andy Mays in which we talk about this. And you come out of that episode realizing how much of your success in the music business is luck versus the quality of the music.
Right.
Like they just had the worst luck with their labels. And they lost the access to the masters.
Right. Yeah. And you go back to you can get it on Apple Music, I'm sure Spotify, whatever. And there are legitimate, in my mind, like hits on multiple on at least 4 or 5 of those records.
Yeah.
And, there was literally probably almost nothing stopping them from being
Wilco.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you never know how
they could have been. I don't know why they're not. Why are they Wilco? But go on.
Like if Hip couldn't make it huge in the U.S., but whatever. My point being is they were an exceptional because it wasn't like there was like 2 songs on 3 records. It was like 9 songs on 5 records.
Right.
And I just chose this one. Could have been many other. And it's interesting too. Their songs are always super. They're almost like in that 2.5 minute range, and they kind of have their own little structure that's a little bit different. But anyway, so, through this girlfriend, I got to meet Andy and hang out with them.
Who's a sweetheart?
He's a wonderful guy. And then,
I called him once to fix my furnace.
From girlfriend to another girlfriend who became my wife. Got to make sure these things are clear.
Get it straight.
My wife, who's always had great musical taste, she was already a Sky Diggers fan, so it was very convenient. And we try to go to that show every chance we get, and I have a funny Jim Cuddy story from going to that show. So I'm sure we'll touch
Hold that one. It is interesting to hear you kick out Sky Diggers right after Tragically Hip, because I have a memory, and I can't. You'll tell me if this is a real memory, but doesn't Gord quote a penny more during his Saturday Night Live performance? Doesn't he like finish a song with a line from A Penny More? I would
have to Google
something. I know. I was about to Google it, but there was a lot of stuff coming up because the Hip covered A Penny More and stuff a lot. I have to. Somebody tell me in the live stream, live.torontomike.com, where this is live. I saw a bunch of people. Somebody was yelling out, Moose Grumpy was yelling out, Pop-Up. We were struggling with the name Pop-Up, and it was there. I should have just gone in and there we go. Pop-Up. Okay, which we finally did get, by the way. So thank you for kicking out Sky Diggers. Again, if you haven't heard Andy Mays on Toronto Mike, I'm cross-promoting here, but it is an excellent episode, and that band is underrated.
I'm going to listen to it, actually, because I missed that one. So
Michael Grange, what are you doing here? So I'm going to do this real quick here because there's so many jams to get to, but it's funny because I had a delivery today, a gentleman named Al Grego who hosts a award-winning excellent podcast called Yes We Are Open. It's a Moneris podcast, and Al travels the country and he gets inspiring stories out of small business owners and entrepreneurs, and I listen to these episodes and it inspires me as the smallest of business owners and an entrepreneur. And Al Grego was here dropping off more wireless speakers because I have one for you, but he did remark, because he knew you were my next guest, because I said, you're going to be here at 10:15 or whatever. He said, I think Michael Grange has a bunch of these speakers already because he thinks maybe your wife scored some. Here, I'm dropping Great Lakes beer everywhere. It's okay. But here is a wireless speaker, courtesy of Moneris, so you can listen to season 4 of Yes We Are Open.
Well, I'm going to have a word. I got to be careful here because...
you be careful. I'm not saying anything more.
My wife does have very strong connections to Moneris, and... what I'm really concerned about is that she's probably given this me 4 times and I haven't paid attention, and so she's going to be mad.
Well, I'll just envision you have a room in your home full of wireless speakers from Moneris. But
possible.
Here, you got another one there anyways. You can
add
it to the collection.
And thank you, Moneris.
Thank you, Moneris. Great partners of this program.
Great partners of my program.
So I hear. Okay, let's kick out another Michael Grange jam.
In the corner with the body screaming daughter. Never sold it back, but looking like Pablo in the fall. This gon' make him feel away like Tony Cumanota. You already know that. You already know that. I walk in the corner with the money on my finger. She might get it poppin', I might wife her for. I already know. I need a rose. Turn up, baby,
St. John, no O required.
So, as I'm listening to this, I recognize I failed to include the word remix.
Oh.
Right, and so that's all my fault.
Oh, it is all your fault, but I
Right.
can play it on YouTube if you want to hear the
why not?
remix. Okay, here. So,
But this is a great version. 'Cause
this is the studio. This is the album version, but we got to make our guests happy. You can start talking about it, and I'll cook it up here in the back.
So I spent a lot of time sitting in arenas, and you hear a lot of. You do hear some good music sometimes, but you hear a lot of music you'd rather not listen to, and you hear it often and over and again.
you got music coming out of you.
My bad.
Is that you? You playing Roses?
No, because I was.
Is it the Imambic remix?
The Manbic remix.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's gonna.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah, very different. Still good. Tell me about why you chose this this remix.
So anyway, as I said, I'm in this is a direct contrast to I think everything on this list in that I have zero knowledge, connection, insight, anything.
You've never had a conversation with St. John.
No, or the guy who remixed it, nothing. And so it's kind of crazy, but you would hear it. I think it was a Peloton commercial. And I was like, and then I would hear it in the arena sometimes, but they'd only kind of play snippets, and I was kind of like, what is this song? It's so cool. And I finally was able to track it down. Oh. And like I actually was coming on, I kind of looked some stuff up about it, and I'm like, so the singer is Guyanese, the producer is Kazakh, like from Kazakhstan.
Okay,
like,
yeah.
And it got big on Snapchat.
See, this is we're way too old for this.
Right.
It's amazing
and so
you
I'm kind of
encountered
like,
it.
and I don't have Snapchat, nor am I Guyanese,
No.
or know anything about Kazakhstan.
But your kids are on Snapchat.
Right, they are. But so anyway, to me, I just love the song. I think it's super, and like I say, I'm in arenas all the time. Some of the stuff you're just like, please, can we just get on with it? And but once in a while, you'll just hear something that's new to me, at least. And the other, so I wanted to include something from my arena life.
Sure.
And the other option was One Thing by Amory. Do you know that one?
I'd have to hear it.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't know what to hear, but it's just absolute banger, as I say.
I will say, so I had everybody was over the other night, meaning that even the older two kids, everybody's here, and I was kicking out getting your jams ready and playing them, and I will say my daughter, who's turning 19 next month, knew this song very well and loved it. Like, was very excited that Michael Grange was kicking this out.
Yeah. So that's all it is. I mean, I got nothing to give you other than to me it's just an incredible contrast in how you gain access and experience to music now. Some ways for the worse in a way, like that there's not like this super lively bar scene you can go see live acts, but other ways the better, that some dude from Kazakhstan and artists from Guyana can somehow become earworm to me.
Okay, on this note, so here, just give me I was going to ask you anyways about the process. Like you normally guests bring 10 jams. You brought 11 and you're Michael Grange, so I'm going to allow it. But
well, you did for Ann Romer. I noted.
You know what? I can't say no to Ann Romer.
How could you?
She
I listened to that. I was like, wow, yeah, I guess not.
So I guess a good question. Like, so
13 jams.
When you heard you were kicking out the jams, did you had to go and cherry pick one to hear how it goes down? Like, is that what happened there? Or
what do you mean?
Like, is Ann Romer the only jam kicking you've heard?
No, I've listened to a few others.
Okay.
I listened to a few
Did
others.
you ever hear Ryan Wallstatt kick out 90s hip hop?
But yeah, and I bet you it would be really good.
He wrote me a note yesterday because he had Donovan Bailey kicked out the jams last week. Yeah. And he wrote me a note, Ryan, who also covers the Raptors. He's at the Toronto Sun. And Ryan was telling me that his jams and Donovan's are identical. Like, he said he's never heard it because he listens to all the Kick Out the Jams. He's listening to us right now. Hello, Ryan. Hello, FOTM, Ryan. But he said that the Donovan Bailey jams were like completely jams that Ryan Wallstatt might kick out. So I don't know if that.
Ryan is he's got, like, we've talked 90s hip hop before.
Yep.
I like it's not really a strength of mine, like it should be, given the age I was and all that. But you know, I certainly
There's no Biggie on your list. Let me check.
Well, that'd be the problem. If I were to include, it would be like the equivalent of Stairway to Heaven for hip hop. And I'm like, you know, no, like, I mean, those are incredible songs. They're amazing, but I, you know, it just would have felt like the most obvious choice. So I chose something different.
Okay, cool. Well, let's get to another jam. Oh yeah, so the process of coming down to whittling it down to 11. Like, I'm curious, do you start with like, I don't know, here's 50 songs and you just start carving?
It's a great question. I kind of started with bands, with artists mostly.
Right.
And then obviously there are a couple of cases where it was just a song. And I think what I ended up deciding was the way my brain began to organize was sort of not so much eras as groups. So we got our, the Can Rock canon, of which, I have like some personal interactions with.
Right.
And then, this song and a couple of others are, how I've kind of come to experience music now that I don't really, it's hard to find original new music at
So how did you discover music in the 80s and 90s? Like what was, like, I know we're similar vintage. So
yeah.
But like, was it literally like listening to the radio, watching much music, and then having friends recommend stuff?
100%. Yeah, that'd be it. And then the one wrinkle in that kind of was huge for me was I went to university in Sackville, New Brunswick, and it's changed a lot now. But at the time, much music was around. It wasn't quite as, it was kind of we weren't quite clear how big a cultural force it was going to become. And so you could go to a place like Sackville and it was definitely off the map in a way. And, but I was really lucky for two reasons. One, the basketball coach there, a guy named Dave Crook, who was really young in his career. We were only about 6 years apart in age. We became really good friends, still are. He was the youngest of, I think, 3 brothers from Winnipeg. And he had this, what seemed to me like the most crazy record collection of all time. And you'd go to his apartment, it would be like walls of music.
Right.
And so he would kind of introduce you to stuff that you'd never otherwise have a chance to hear. There was a college, we had a radio station there, and so that was pretty good. And there was a really good live, because of Sackville. Sackville's kind of like, if you're going to tour the Maritimes, you pass by it, you can't really avoid it. And so we'd get these incredible bands coming there. Like everybody seemed to show up multiple times.
Amazing.
And so, it was kind of like this weird confluence of events. And so, and then in the summers I'd come back to Toronto, and then I was old enough to be out in the bars. And so, you open up Now Magazine and you just go and,
shout out to Now Magazine.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. It was really fun.
What a time. Okay. What a time to be alive.
What a time. It was, it was, I will say that with confidence. Yeah.
Now let's kick out the jam. So I mentioned my almost 19-year-old daughter loved that last jam, but my 9-year-old son.
See, I'm spanning generations here.
This song here I'm about to kick out. My 9-year-old son loves this song and actually dressed as this character, I want to say. I don't know. But let's get to this jam.
Yeah, I'd rather be a lover than a fighter. Cause all my life I've been fighting. Never felt a feeling of comfort. All this time I've been hiding. And I never had someone to come on. Oh, nah, I'm so used to shit. Love only left me alone. But I'm at one with the silence. I found peace in your vibes. Can't show me there's no point in trying. I'm at one, and I've been quiet for too long. I found peace in your vibes. Can't show me there's no point in trying. I'm at one, and I've been silent for too long. Quiet for too long. I've been quiet for too long. I found peace in your vibes.
Marshmallow. Who my son did dress as for Halloween last year, by the way.
Good for him.
Yeah. Talk to me about silence.
Yeah, so kind of touching on what you're referring to, it just you kind of get to a certain stage, and then like if I looked at my you took my iPhone, what are those called before they were iPhones?
Smartphones. What are we talking about? Androids.
The music thing.
The music thing. The let's playlist iPods.
The iPod.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyway, so
Hasn't been that long, Michael.
Oh man, believe me, it's been a busy 20 years. But so you looked at my iPod in 2000, which
Right.
was the year before my daughter was born, and looked at it and say 2018, by which time
Right.
there wouldn't be that much new music on it. Like it was just you're just kind of completely. There's no time to be casually sampling tunes.
They say by the time you're like 21 or whatever, all that your music is your music. Like
Right.
you just carry that for the
Which
rest of your life.
saddens me a bit,
I know,
right?
but it's true.
And so, but the bonus is you start to experience things through your kids as they get a bit older, and I'm sure you've had that experience with your daughter. And so the summer of 2017, my daughter was really, really at playing volleyball at a really high level, and so we were, I was driving her out to Burlington. It felt like 3 days a week for training. I can't remember. And so this album called American Team by Khalid came out, and she was really into it, and I loved it. Like I loved every track on it. I listened to it all the time. We wore that thing out going back and forth to Burlington, it felt like.
Nice.
And then at the same time, my son, who's a little bit younger, he was kind of getting into some EDM and things like that. And so when Marshmello did this thing with Khalid, a collab, right?
Absolutely.
And I just thought it was awesome. I think it's great.
Amazing.
And it also makes me think of my kids, and now it's, they're like a real resource to me. Like, when we go on drives, they always have the aux cord, as they say. And,
Right.
but our tastes are kind of fusing a little bit. Like my son's Spotify thing is featuring a lot of songs that I kind of knew and recognized, and my daughter too a little bit. But then there's also, as you'd expect, there's stuff that I'd never come across, and it's been great. It's been a really fun little ride. So this is sort of a song that makes me think of how those things happen, and I love it. I think it's a great song.
Honestly, I relate 100% because my oldest child is 21, about 21 and a half. And I learn about modern day hip hop from him. He's a bit of a hip hop head himself, although he goes back and he'll kick out the 90s stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm telling him stories. Or like, I was there, I'm telling these stories or whatever, like an old man and, in my rocking chair or whatever. But when, even artists that aren't that new, but are still new to me because I sort of cut things off at some point, like Earl Sweatshirt and stuff. He's giving me the history and we're playing all the new stuff. And I learn a lot about music from my kids. The older set, the younger set, it kind of keeps you fresh.
You just got to get through that stage where their musical taste is terrible. There's that age 7 to 13. It's like, please. And then
you're like, oh yeah, I remember I was big on my pop music, my CFTR. By the way, today's the anniversary. You work for Rogers, right? Okay.
I do.
So today's the anniversary of when CFTR left top 40 for All News 680.
There you go.
This is on this day in 1993. So there's a fun Toronto
How do
radio
you know
fan.
that?
I think Mike Eppel tweeted, FOTM Mike Eppel tweeted about it today, and then I took note. I learned all my things from Twitter, okay, Michael? So keep tweeting.
Nothing wrong with that.
Here's a quick gift. I'm giving you a lot of gifts.
I know. I'm feeling blessed.
Did you bring me anything, Michael?
My passion.
Can I call you Mike, or is
You can call me Mike, yeah.
okay? Just Michael.
There's a big thing right now in the NBA where Michael Malone, the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, was once known as Mike Malone, but now he really
He's
wants to be known as
professional now.
Michael Malone.
He's
So
changed it up.
I've
on
never
you.
cared.
It's like, was it Joey Bell wanted to be Albert Bell? Okay. Is it Manny Lee did that, I think. He gave like a notice to reporters like, call me Manuel or something like that. Okay, this is a flashlight, Michael. Keep, you're in the dark. You don't want to fall and trip and end up at Ridley Funeral Home. So this is courtesy of Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of this community since 1921.
OG Anunoby this year introduced like O.G. So like for
Right.
Matt Devlin, it didn't matter.
Right.
For us, I was like, oh frig.
Yeah, 'cause
O.G.
you're right.
Like it was like why'd you do this, OG?
It's like, your
Really?
style
Is that
guide
important
is
to you?
updated there. Yeah,
Anyway.
right. Speaking of Devlin,
I know.
on Twitter this morning, he broke his foot.
I know. I got to give him a call. I feel bad.
Hey.
Like there's in our business to screw up your summer is excruciating. It's the worst.
It's like that Simpsons episode when Bart broke his leg and they had the pool.
Like break your leg in January, no big deal.
Yeah, right.
June, horrible. I feel bad for Matt.
Tell Matt, because many times Matt has committed to coming on Toronto Mic'd, and then for various reasons it never got on the calendar. Now maybe we'll wait for the cast to come off or something.
Yeah.
But remind him.
You won't be able to get down these stairs.
You won't have to do it outside. I can do it outside. I can move this around. Jack Armstrong made me set up at his in his hotel. I did just before the pandemic, and just shortly after you, I guess.
Speaking of the Danforth Music Hall, I went to Jack's Christmas record release,
right?
Which was actually
Was
pretty
that good?
It was pretty good, yeah.
Okay, he's quite the character. I love that guy. Okay, let's kick out another Grange jam. Social Distortion.
Social D, baby.
How far back do you go with this band? Like the American hardcore stuff, or how far back do you go?
No, like I think his post prison stint. I think so. Like they had a couple of records out, and then he went to rehab. Then I think they might have jailed. There was a stint in jail there, and then they had a real nice run in the early '90s, mid '90s. I think this is off their the last of their big records. I think
White Light, White Heat, White Trash.
And I just I think my first really favorite band was probably The Clash, and I really kind of wish I had at least one Clash song on this thing, but I figured I could at least talk about the.
You can always do a sequel, like next summer, come back and kick out 10 more jams.
Yeah, just keep coming. So anyway, so like I kind of, I enjoy, some punk-ish music, and I just found this song, and they got a bunch of great songs, but this one, I love the edge of it. I love the snarl of it, and and as I've gotten older, I love the fact of it. Like I was wrong. This, I don't really, I can't say I've probably. Mike Ness has a lot more things to regret than I do, but you just that theme of kind of looking back and go, man, I'm an idiot, or I was an idiot, and I was wrong, and it kind of hits home. Like I've like listened to the song and choked up before. Like it just kind of, if you ever, that whole thing, no regrets. I find anytime actually anyone says that, I want to punch them.
Yeah, that's got to be bullshit.
I think it's the stupidest thing ever.
I'm with you.
Because I got plenty of regrets, and this song is clearly aimed at that demographic, and it's just a great song. Great song.
It's a great song, and I
saw them at the Government, on
Rest
this
in
tour.
peace.
Yeah, and it was awesome. Like you talk about, man, that was a lot of like people who enjoyed venting their anger in one place.
Well, I think that would attract some, because these are like in the, I guess, early 80s. This is like an American hardcore band, right? Like you're listening to this song and it's so accessible. Like this is not part of that. But I did an episode. I want to shout out Brother Bill, who was on CFNY for years. And, we talked about how we were introduced to music. A lot of times I would hear Brother Bill spin a song on CFNY and I'd be like, I got to get that. I got to go down to Sam's or HMV and get that album, whatever, or A&A, whatever. But we did an American hardcore episode where we just talked about the history of American hardcore and kicked out the big jams. So check out that episode if you want to hear more. But I do have a fun fact for you, Michael Grange, here, which is that this is the biggest hit if you go by charts, and chart schmarts. But the biggest hit of Social Distortion's career is that jam we just kicked out, and it's the only song they've ever released that hit the U.S. Billboard Hot 100.
There you go. And I would say they probably have. I was kind of listening to I took a road trip down to New Jersey. I kind of listened to them for one stretch, about 4 straight hours, and they probably got about 10, 12 like absolute bangers, and this one I just find resonates the most.
Great. And I love that. It's a great segue to your next jam, I find. But I do want to ask you about your pandemic look. So I sent a tweet yesterday and I said, this handsome devil is visiting tomorrow morning. And it's a picture you tweeted during the pandemic. You grew out your beard. So talk to me about the pandemic look, if you don't mind. And will we ever see it again?
Well, it's good timing because the next bunch of songs are kind of pandemic, the songs that I kind of got into for all the legitimate tragedy and bad things about the pandemic. One of the great things was it just sort of slowed your life, and for me, I listened to more music than I had in the 2 decades before, and kind of was able to get into some, to me, new things. And but yeah, so yeah, I don't know why everyone stopped shaving. I did. I kind of do it sort of off season anyway, and it became just a thing. And it is still my Twitter profile. I suppose at some point I might change it.
But it's great because you kind of can see Michael Grange in that face. Like I can say, oh yeah, that's Michael Grange. But at the same time, it's so radically different than the Michael Grange I'm looking at right now.
Right.
It's like,
right. And it would kind of, and I also have a picture of me like all clean cut interviewing Steph Curry. So it's like, I just needed to have that. I couldn't have it. I needed that just to make sure.
But it wasn't just the beard, right? Because you had the hair, and I did that during the pandemic.
That's how
too.
I felt.
Yeah, I agree. What a time, eh? When you look back, because we're kind of, I'm sure COVID is still causing a lot of grief to a lot of people, and it's still here, but it's no longer at the forefront of our daily. Like now we're worried about smoke in our lungs whatever. So we had to switch gears here. But when I look back and I think about things like, okay, I remember because I had young kids at the time, and I remember thinking playgrounds got shut down. Like when I look back, they shut down playgrounds. And I don't golf, but I have friends who golf, and it's like, we can't golf right now. And I'm thinking, like it was just such a bizarre time, and it was so bad for so many people's mental health. And I just think it's going to take a long time for a lot of people to actually recover from the trauma from the COVID-19 pandemic.
I think that's reasonable. And it was really bad for people who cut hair for a living. Like they were the ones who like arguably was this segment, them in restaurants, right, were the ones who had it the worst.
Right.
So
live performers had it bad too.
Yeah, they did too. But
you weren't going to the horseshoe.
But I don't think I'm a little vain, as I presume most people are. But I won't be bringing that beard back because at the time I had like just a little touch of gray, no big deal. Now I'd be worried. So
Touch of Gray, biggest hit in Grateful Dead's history.
Yeah, good song. So no, I don't think I'll be bringing back the COVID beard anytime soon.
All right, well, since we introduced COVID, let's get to some more jams and we hear more from Michael Grange. I'm loving this, by the way. Here we go.
Every morning we burn the bread.
Yeah.
Walk it down to the water's edge. See the seagulls eat cigarettes. Check your breath in a spoon. All your stuff in the storage shed. Twisted sheets on the trundle bed. And the antipsychosis meds made you feel all marooned. Last summer at the shore when I was working cleaning carpets at some hotel that was haunted by some sailor who supposedly was murdered after losing all his treasure in the harbor. That's back when I found romance in these ghosts. I was honestly more bothered by the 100 miles of hallways than the clanking of the shackles or the shadows in the doorway. And we snuck into the ballroom and made echoes in its empty. And I grabbed you and I spun you, and we both just started laughing.
unpleasant breakfast. The Hold Steady.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I was almost a little hesitant including this because I know the Hold Steady fan base is like super intense, right? Like they're like, and I am very much kind of a dabbler Hold Steady wise. Right. You know, I certainly, I listen. I think they're great. They're like, I'm looking forward to seeing them in concert. Although I hear you got to be prepared. Like it's a little scary.
What are they, like Deadheads? What
no,
are we
I think they're like super intense, kind of a little aggro, but I could be wrong, so I don't want to.
Well, we can find out. We'll just have to talk to Dave Hodge. I know he's seen the Hold Steady a bunch of times.
But like I think it was might even have been Steve Brunt who kind of put me onto them.
Did you hear his visit
no,
last
I've got
week?
it.
Okay,
favored,
you got it.
I got
Mr. Globe and Mail. Yeah, absolutely.
And anyway, so and like I'm really prone to kind of narrative music. I love a story. I love an arc within a song. It doesn't have to be that, obviously, but I kind of always tweaks me, and when it's done well, it's amazing. And I don't know if there's anyone who does it better than these guys, since Springsteen. And so this album came out during the pandemic, and this was year 2 of the pandemic, and so I just, as we all did, I became, the Raptors were in Tampa at the time, and this kind of covers the next few songs, and so I would go to the studio, or the studio set up in the practice facility at Scotiabank Arena, and we'd go in there and watch the game, and then talk about it on TV, and the games that we weren't broadcasting, I'd watch at home and write about, and otherwise, I had a lot of free time on my hands. You were not running around the city going to practice and doing all these kinds of things. And so I got really into home maintenance and did a bunch of stuff around my house and in particular
it's turning into a Springsteen song, I think.
Yeah, it does at the end. Yeah, and I got into like painting, drywalling.
Good for you.
And obviously, you're at home with 2 teenagers and your significant other, and headphones become your friend.
Yeah.
And so this album came out, and this song I think it's amazing. It's just got so many layers to it. I spent some summers at the Jersey Shore. My brother lives down there, and so it kind of makes me think about that too. And it's kind of a sad song. It's about somebody who kind of has I believe some kind of overdose, I think. And but it's it just kicks. I just love it.
It's got those tempo changes in it, just like a Springsteen song.
Sucker for that.
Yeah. I'll let the wrap up here.
This coffee's cold. This toast is gross. I no longer see the romance in these ghosts.
Great jam. Great choice. So you mentioned Stephen Brunt, and then I mentioned Dave Hodge, and then I was thinking just off the cuff here that there are certain sports journalists that probably love music more than sports. Okay, like I don't know how to close it. Like I noticed this because I kick out the jams of lots of them. Right. That's why most of them do kick out a Springsteen song, by the way, but not necessarily Stephen Brunt, whose jam kicking was amazing too.
Yeah, it would be.
You got some Brunt catching up to do there. But I'm curious, so now I'm learning more about. That's why I'm glad we're doing this, because I knew this all came from, and I'm not going to spoil it, but we're going to close with a band, and it's all going to become apparent, like where this all kind of comes, the kernel of all this. But I'm excited to hear what songs does Michael Grange love. And now I hear you're a big music buff, and do you have some, when you encounter in the wild the Stephen Brunts and the Dave Hodges of the world, do you guys talk music? And like who else would you throw in that list? Like who are these sports media people who are massive music fanatics?
Eric Koreen comes to mind. And the downside with sports media now is there's so much less crossover. There always was. You were always kind of in your own little hockey tribe or basketball tribe or whatever it might be.
That's true.
But you would there'd be occasions you'd retreat to an office and encounter other people or whatever. So that's a little kind of a little downside.
Yeah.
But among my little group that I see, I mean, Ryan is a huge hip hop guy.
90s hip hop. Nobody loves it more.
He'd be my source. And then, but Eric Koreen is a guy who, he's just enough younger than me that we cross over a little bit, but he kind of puts me onto some stuff. And there's so he's a good resource. And but it's kind of funny at the other extreme of this. This earlier this year, I think I was in I don't know what city, and we're the way you do it on the road is they'll have a shoot around on the road at the arena. And, they always say, be there at 10:15 and then the team will roll in at like 11. And so you end up sitting around a lot. And so it was me, Savannah Hamilton, who's the sideline person for Sportsnet, and Kayla Gray was there, I think. And Eric was there. And we somehow were talking about music. I can't remember exactly the context. And I think Savannah asked me, so what are your 5 favorite songs or 5 favorite bands or something?
There you go.
And I kind of, just off the top of my head, said something. Yeah. And like by band 2, her face just went blank. And like Savannah's amazing. She's great.
Yeah.
But she's a lot younger than I am.
Right.
And it was not resonating. There was not the
what diggers, the sky diggers.
Totally,
what
that
is
kind of
this?
thing. The what? Anyway, so but that said, I bet you Savannah's. If you were to have her here,
I would totally. I need Savannah on to
kick out the jams. I think would be worthy. But
one name. Oh no, you're in mid-sentence there. I was going to just drop one name because you work with him on Raptors broadcast. But I don't think there's a bigger Bruce Springsteen fan in Toronto media than Brad Fay.
Yeah, no, he's
in triple digits.
Yeah, we've had a lot of.
He's seen him 100 plus times.
Yeah, and I've talked to him quite a bit about it, and it just sounds like the funnest thing ever, right? Like, I remember we were in Philly and he was talking about going to see Springsteen in Philly one time.
Right.
And just, you get there, it's summer, there's like, you're just surrounded by people who have the same passions you do, and everyone's kind of tailgating. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. Sounds really good.
Yeah, he kicked out the jams, and obviously.
Did he have any non-Springsteen?
Well, I don't let you kick out more than one song from the same artist.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even. I didn't
tell
even.
me that.
Well, I usually call you out on it when you do it, but
Okay.
I kind of knew you weren't going to do that. Okay, we got a few more jams here. I'm loving this. Let's kick out another one.
Suddenly I find I got darkness on my mind. It's a question mark that keeps me looking, and it's never satisfied. And it's never what I thought. Saying I'm happy when I'm not. No, I got darkness on my mind. Leaning out the frame when it's particulate and gray. I'm perpendicular to my whole being when I lean a certain way. Saying I'm happy when I'm not. Finding roaches in the pie. No, I got darkness on my mind. Some people spend their whole lives looking for someone who could understand. Meanwhile, I like women. Now sometimes all the drying is wet. No, it's been a long time coming. I'm angry and I know that's weak.
Jigging it, Michael. Okay, Darkness by Pine Grove.
I remember foisting this upon my daughter in the car at some point, and they're going, "Are you okay, Dad? Is everything all right?" And
Why is it a little emo here?
yeah, it's. I think their band description is alt country / emo, and this song in particular is, it's the guy's clearly going through something,
Right.
but I'm a big fan of the sad song that's actually the happy song that's actually a really sad song.
Oh, like Hey Ya by Outkast.
Hey Yeah is one. The ultimate in this genre is Margaritaville by Jimmy Buffett.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like a Rorschach's test. Like if people think that's a happy song,
right,
then for me they're not my friend. Like, you don't get it. You haven't paid attention. And if you actually
you're
listen
not
to
listening.
it,
You're
not
just
listening.
into the groove.
And
right.
but it's that's Margaritaville is a pretty sad song.
That's right.
And so this is, again, I just love how clean it is. It's got a little bit of that Wilco vibe. And this band, I got into during the pandemic. A buddy of mine, Jay Foster, I went to school with, is a really smart music guy, and his sister Jennifer actually did some stuff with. She was a musician, actress. Did some stuff with Mo Berg.
Love Mo Berg.
Mo Berg, and I came
Good
close.
FOTM.
Cigarette Dangles was very. If we had 12 songs, it might have been on. and Sarah Harmer as well. And anyway,
Yeah, she's great.
So I remember just talking to him over the pandemic, and he's like, "No, what do you listen to?" And he said, "These guys are good." Turns out they're from Montclair, New Jersey, which is adjacent to where my brother and his family lives. And I remember asking his oldest, "Have you ever heard of these guys?" He goes, "No." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." But so yeah, they're not like this huge band by any stretch. They're they kind of, I think they ran into a little bit of headwinds with, might have been a bit of a Me Too thing, a mild one, if there's such a thing.
I went to the wiki page. I got myself up to speed because I'm not familiar with this band.
No, and whatever. But I mean, they had 3 or 4 records, and they kind of were trending. And then between that and the pandemic, I think they kind of lost their wind. But I just love the song. It's just, I'm a sucker for that sound, super clean, and just the message is kind of that resonates sometimes too.
Fantastic here. So we're winding down, only a couple of jams to go, and I have a note here from FOTM Dan O'Toole.
Play golf with Dan.
Well, this is Dan's question. Be sure to ask his thoughts on the historic Stanley Thompson designed Peterborough Golf and Country.
Wonderful spot. And it was really cool. A couple of weeks ago, a really good friend of mine, Ian Armstrong, has played there like since birth almost, and I always try and get up there and play with him at least once or twice a summer. And he says, "Hey, so Dan O'Toole plays out of there now too." And he said, "Do you mind if Dan joins?" I go, "Sure." And it was kind of funny because I'd only ever met Dan once at the 2010 Olympics. And so, but it was like, "Hey, Dan, how you doing, Dan?"
Well, you just know each other from the television.
Kind of,
This is how we're...
yeah.
Who,
And I think he had a career,
recently.
I think he had a career best day that day we played, Dan.
Is that
did.
right?
Yeah.
So he hit 90 there. What did he hit?
I think he might have been lower than that. He played pretty well. So.
Okay, so one of the all-time great Toronto Mic'd episodes is the Dan O'Toole episode.
It would be.
It was really great. And then he told me the drive almost killed him. And that was back when I would never do a remote because pre-COVID, I would not do remotes. Like you had to be sitting here in the basement or this doesn't happen. And that was true for everybody. And he's like, he's coming from Orono or something. He's like, he goes, I almost died doing this. Anyway, so we got to get him back at some point. But yeah, Hebsy did tell me he golfed with Dan O'Toole, I think this, recently. I think so. But okay, great. Love to hear that. And here, let's get to another Michael Grange jam.
I like to think I'm a mess you'd wear with pride, like some empty dress on the bed you've laid out for tonight. Maybe I'll tell you sometime.
Great song, but great title for a song. I go to the barn because I like. This is Band of Horses.
Thank you. Yeah, great job on that fade, actually. I was wondering where you were going to do it, and that you picked the right spot. So I referenced earlier the guy I used to play basketball for at Mount A million years ago, who's now athletic director at Winnipeg and had a pretty good coaching career. After he stopped coaching me, his career picked up. It did, actually. He won a gold medal for Canada, or bronze medal for Canada once, actually. But,
Amazing.
Yeah. But anyway, so he's like again, another guy I go to a resource, and he'd been in a band of horses, and I'd sort of vaguely heard of them. They're certainly not a new band. But again, they fell in that 2002 to 2019 void, or 18, whatever it might be. And so I kind of, and one of the first bands I really got into as a kid was the Beach Boys. And my mom used to work at the library. She'd bring back records for me. And I just love harmony, like really, really good.
Well, that's why you
harmony.
like the Skydiggers.
I like harmony and minor keys. Those are my two. Those are my two weak points. And so I remember when I think of the song, and I remember just walking my dog at night during the pandemic just to get out of the house, kind of, and you'd have the headphones on, and it was just it was almost like in the old days where like a whole side of a record would just be seamless, and
Right.
they would almost organize their records like that, and this one just kind of jumps out at me, but it could have been several others because their harmonies are amazing, and I'm
a sucker for Band of Horses too. I mean, the big jams would be like "No One's Gonna Love You" or "The Funeral," or "Is There a Ghost?" Amazing songs, and just I love it. That's a great jam. Now I almost shouldn't do this, but I just was poking around here, kicking out that jam, listening, and I received word. Were you a big WWF fan back in the day? I have my George Animal Steel and my Andre the Giant here. Did you ever get into WWF wrestling?
Really? I mean, I grew up in Montreal like when I was a little kid, and so there was a big wrestling scene there, and I'm more like Andre the Giant era,
right?
And then when I was at university, some buddies of mine were into it, so the Hulk Hogan era. And but otherwise, no.
But that era you're referring to, in fact, I think I have memories.
The golden age.
That golden age. That's my time. I was done with it by like 88 or
Although
something.
it's make this huge comeback, right?
Well,
like everyone's.
So
into
I hear.
Again. Yeah.
Shout out to Stu Stone. But I did just receive the sad news that the Iron Sheik passed away.
Oh,
and he was. I think Hulk Hogan might have got his first WWF belt by pinning.
He'd be
Iron
quite.
Sheik.
He wouldn't have been a young man though at this.
Well, he
stage.
couldn't have been because he was wrestling in the 70s. But So anyway, shout out to Ridley Funeral
My
Home.
only yes, go ahead.
No,
I didn't mean to interrupt
shout out
the
to Ridley
sponsor.
Funeral Home. There's something I'll say when I learn somebody passed away.
I did get changed once at the old Curzon gym at the old Sky Dome, beside Ric Flair.
Wow.
Yeah.
But he never wrestled in the WWF. I mean, he's not in my era.
I don't know
but
why
he was like big in like WCW, I think.
Who knows?
I'm showing my
but
ignorance here.
I do recall the tan lines.
Yeah, he's still alive, believe it or not, which I think is beats some odds here. Okay, so this is your penultimate jam because we're closing. We have a special closing jam. Let's kick it.
You said we should look out further. I guess it wouldn't hurt us. We don't have to be around all these coffee shops. Now we got that percolator. Never made a latte greater. I'm saving $23 a week. We drive to a house in Preston. We see police arresting a man with his hand in a bag. How's that for first impressions? This place seems depressing. It's a Californian bungalow in a cul-de-sac. It's got a lovely garden, a garage for 2 cars to park in, or a lot of room for storage if you've just got one. And it's going pretty cheap, you say? Well, it's a deceased estate. Aren't the pressed metal ceilings great? Then I see the handrail in the shower, a collection of those canisters for coffee, tea and flour, and a photo of a young man in a van in Vietnam. And I can't think of floorboards anymore, whether the front room faces south or north, and I wonder what she bought it for.
You can really hear the Aussie accent in this one.
Yeah.
Courtney Barnett.
Yeah, just I could have chosen about 10 songs, and I don't know. I honestly don't really know how popular she is. I kind of stumbled into her because that band Always, right? And Marry Me Archie is one of my favorites.
I love that song.
I love that song. It's one of my favorites. And they were produced, I think, by Kurt Weill. And Kurt Weill, and I just was literally like stumbling this, raking the leaves one day listening to music, and Kurt Weill did a record of covers with Courtney Barnett, and there are 2 or 3 hits off of that.
A lot of Sea Lice.
Yeah, and there's a couple of really, really Over Everything is amazing. There's another really good one, and so I just kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I've never come out. And she is. We talk about Springsteen, but I think she's it's stupid for me to say because there's obviously a million people I have no clue who they are, what they're about. But for my experience, she's the best songwriter, best lyricist I've ever heard. If you're into like wordplay and this song is a great example. Like it's just this kind of funky little story about them going to buy a house as a young couple, and it's it touches on a lot of themes about commercialization of real estate, gentrification, all these kind of things. But she just spies the handrail in the shower and the photo of the young man in Vietnam, and the song goes in a completely different direction in my mind, at least.
Yeah.
And it's really moving, and and I could go on and on. Like she's got a song called Avant Gardener about her having an asthma attack, which is like, it's unbelievably funny and good and clever, and just the most mundane day-to-day thing, and she's writing this like maybe kind of a hit song about it. I'm not sure. And
really, what does it matter anymore? Like sort of like what is a hit? Like what is that anymore? Like Billboard Hot 100 is dominated by like a small group of hip hop and R&B artists. It's like this song that we're listening to now can't chart on a Billboard Hot 100 anymore like it did back in our day or whatever. Like it's what is hit? Like everything's about your lane. It's like this is it's like you've got
to be enough in your lane that you can sustain yourself, I think would be the thing. And so on that note, the first outdoor concert I went to was at Ontario Place, the Budweiser stage. And Band of Horses opened for the Black Keys, I think, which was a little disappointing actually in the whole scheme of things. But Courtney Barnett played at the new Massey Hall in I believe January, February. And
were you there?
I was there. It was amazing. It was. Did you go?
No, I didn't go. But
it was a funny crowd. Like I thought.
Well, I bet you anything Dave Hodge was there. That's why.
It's possible.
I bet you he was there.
It was possible because the crowd was very LGBTQT. I'm running out of the letters, but that's like sort of her base, maybe a little bit, and then a lot of guys like me who I guess like songwriting.
You're just there for great music,
and it was, and you're always a little anxious when you kind of get into somebody through their recorded stuff, like you're prepared almost for a letdown, and she just killed it. Like it was her, I think it's just 3 pieces. It was her, she's the guitarist, a bass player, and a drummer, and they just were so good, so tight, and I'm a big fan.
Love it so much, and we have one jam to go here. Again, your 11th jam. It's like a Spinal Tap. You turned it to 11 here. I have to thank recyclemyelectronics.ca, because if anyone listening has any old electronics, old tech that they need to dispose of, do not throw it in the garbage. It just ends up in the landfill. There's chemicals in there that we don't want in the landfill. So go to recyclemyelectronics.ca and find out the depot closest to you where you could drop off the old electronics to be safely disposed of. They do great work. So thank you, recyclemyelectronics.ca, and thank you to the Moment Lab. The Moment Lab would be a great help to a big brand like Michael Grange. They basically specialize in public relations and have a team of experienced professionals who know how to craft stories and that resonate with your audience and generate positive media coverage. I am happy to introduce everyone listening to Matt and Jared at the Moment Lab, and you can learn more about how they can help you achieve your public relations goals. So we're closing with this jam. I actually pulled a clip with a conversation I had about you with somebody that you know, and I might play that before the jam. I'm now debating in my head, but I do want to ask you the one Raptor question. So obviously we're not talking Raptors today, but who is the next head coach of the Toronto Raptors, Michael Grange?
Well, I'm going to check my phone, make sure it hasn't
Well,
happened.
it's all Iron Sheik all the time now.
I don't know. It's kind of.
Well, that's what you're here for, to break the story.
A little bit odd that they haven't. The fact that they haven't hired someone yet makes me think there's either a couple of coaches who are still working. There's an assistant with Denver, I think, who could. I don't know if he's in the mix, but it makes me wonder. And then Sergio Scariolo, who is still coaching in Italy.
Great, another name for me to butcher.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
But again, I'm certainly not reporting anything. I'm as lost as everybody else.
We're lost together.
We're lost together.
Okay, here we go. So here's what I've decided I'm going to do. I'm actually going to play a couple of minutes of a conversation I had with someone named Jim Cuddy. And I'm going to play this and then go right into this final jam, and then we're going to talk about it on the other side. So let's listen to my conversation from Toronto Mike with Jim Cuddy. Michael Grange, who does a great job covering Raptors for Sportsnet. I don't even know where this is going, so you tell me what this means.
Yeah.
He goes, does Jim remember the Blueheads?
Of course. And
so what is
not
this?
even do I remember it. I have tried to mention it to Michael on the few times that when I've met him, and he looks at me as if he doesn't remember. But I believe it was Mount Allison. We used to play Mount 8. We used to play significantly back when we started. Almost all the universities had full-time programmers, music programmers. So somebody that was hired, not even a student, just somebody who's hired to bring in music.
Right.
And it was always live bands, and that was the renaissance of Canadian bands. Like they were bringing one band after
But are we
another.
talking about like Max Webster? Or are we talking later?
We're talking about later than that. We're talking
Okay.
about Katie Lang. We're talking about Jeff Healy. We're talking about us. We're talking about Cowboy Junkies. We're talking about anyway. We're talking about all that era of Canadian bands. And so when we'd play Mount A because it was a very good place for us to play. And then we'd go and do PEI or we'd do this. And all of a sudden we'd see on the boat the same people we saw the night before, Michael Grange being one of them. And then we'd go to Halifax and Michael Grange would be there. Now he would have been a Mount A student at the time.
Right.
And it was the first time that we ever had any of that, Deadhead stuff, right? That people are following us around, seeing every show.
Wild.
So that was a big deal. It's called Blueheads. I don't know whether we named them or they named themselves, but we were very
like parrot heads.
We were very, very impressed by that. So then, flash forward many years later, I see Michael on, because I recognize him and I see him on. He's doing the basketball and he's this serious
3-point Grange.
He's this serious guy. And a couple of times I said, Michael, hi, you remember him? And he just blanks it out like, okay, I guess you don't want to talk about it.
Well, when he heard, because he follows me on Twitter, when he heard Jim Cuddy was coming on, right away, there's a Michael Grange. He wants to know if you remember the Blueheads. I love that story, by the way. That's amazing.
No, that was a big deal for us. You see that? So going back to one of the other questions, when did you know you'd made it?
Right.
We never thought we'd made it. I kept my union card till 95. I kept my job until after we were touring Diamond Mine. So anyway. But there were so many things that were so different, like being recognized in an airport. People go, oh my God.
Right.
Or people following us in the East Coast. Those were things that had never happened to us before. And so they were little inklings that things were different. Right. I don't think that we could ever admit to ourselves we'd made it.
Here on the outskirts of life, dreams seldom come true. Flipping through photographs, emotional holographs, cutouts of all the figures you might have been.
sense, conscious of every breath. And every moment is a crisis, I guess. Staring at the window of your hotel room, you let one too many fire underneath that spoon. Well, I guess you deserve the chosen few. Real life, just out of view. That's just here on the outskirts. Yeah, that's here on the outskirts of your life.
Bluehead Michael Grange, talk to me about Blue Rodeo.
Yeah, well, that was I heard that episode. I mean, and
well, I hope so. It was for you, man.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Jim's being really gracious there. I will quibble with me blowing off. That never once ever happened. You know, and it's just funny. And as I kind of look back at, you know, Skyder's hip, all that, just again, like I said off the top, I just feel really lucky because it was just, you know, there's been books written about this, right? Like it's just a very special pocket of Canadian.
Michael Barclay wrote the book. Yeah,
I have it. And, you know, of Canadian music history, right? It's just a conflation or conflation of so many things.
Never was the no. Well, okay, I'll come up with the name.
I think it never was the same. I do have it. It's a long book. It's like 1,200 words, pages, but just so many things happening, like Jim said, of that allowed this music scene to grow and take off and peak, and so just being the age I was, you know, and it was kind of easy to kind of stumble into these experiences, literally sometimes stumble, and so yeah. So anyways, going back to Mount Allison, you know, Outskirts came out. I think maybe my second year of university. They toured, they smashed it. And I remember going to a bar called the the Middle Deck in Halifax, and drinking peach schnapps in the back of this Lada the entire way. It's about a 2-hour drive. The driver wasn't drinking; we all were.
Right.
And you know, predictably, I think I had to be rescued from being thrown out. Wow. And so, you know, that was maybe if I was ever sheepish, it was because I'm still embarrassed by that. But anyway, they would come, and then in those years, I would still come back to Toronto, work in the summers, and then they would be at Lee's Palace or wherever, and I would go see them then, and you know, and shout out Blueheads, whatever, and so we probably seemed like we were following them a little more than, you know, it was just because I was in different places, but you know, one of my fondest memories was, I think it was a Diamond Mine tour probably. And we saw them, I think, in at Mount A in Sackville. It might even have been homecoming, like pretty early in the year. And then basketball season had started, and so we all piled onto the ferry because they were playing in Summerside, PEI the next night. And we didn't have a ticket or anything. There was probably 6 of us, and we just get on the boat, and you know, it's a big ferry, but it's not that big, and we kind of encountered them. And you know, how interested were they in speaking with us? I'm not sure, right? Like, you know, a bunch of college kids, and they were, you know, on tour, but they were great, and they were really nice, and they left us a bunch of tickets at the door, and we showed up, and just like, it was just an awesome show, and that kind of would sort of keep happening. Like I remember running into Jim Cuddy at the Central Y, saying hello, or I'd run into Greg Keeler once in the street on Carlton and saying hello, or at a Becker's or something. And you know, not that they, you know, and not that they were like, I was just a fan, like, you know, and they were always very gracious and nice. And you know, you look at their music and wow, like, you know, there's like, again, like just an incredible catalog of incredible stuff. And you know, and so I think maybe one of my peak moments was at one of the Sky Deer's Christmas shows, and Dave Festnick and I wrote a book called Leaf's Abomination, which it might be due for a re-up based on how things have gone this year. And it was pretty popular at the time. We were doing a lot of like support around it and media around it. And Jim was one of the guest performers with the Skydiggers at this Christmas thing.
Right.
And, he was coming out and we just kind of crossed paths in that narrow bar area at the Horseshoe. And he recognized me. Like I knew who, of course I recognized him. I hadn't seen him in like years. And he made a point of coming over to saying hello to me and congratulating me on the book. I couldn't believe it. Then like the people I was with were like, what? And so the next day I went over to their offices and dropped off a whole bunch of books for them. And
the Woodshed?
Yeah, I think that's where it was.
That's where I recorded with Jim.
Yeah, and and so it was really cool, and it's amazing that he remembered that, and the context of which he put it was really nice. And I sent that clip, that episode, out to a whole bunch of my friends.
Oh, nice!
They were all excited by it, and
the Blueheads.
Yeah, and
well, that's when they knew. I love that line where he talks about like because he jokes that they mid '90s they still didn't know they made it, but that scene like we have like these Blueheads following us was a big deal to that band, right? That kind of
and
let
it's
them
funny
know that they might make it.
And being on the other side of that, you just you're almost embarrassed a few years later. Like what were we like? How But it was cool that they appreciated it, and my wife and I went and saw them at Budweiser Stage.
Right.
Might have been last summer, the summer before. And
the venue, they don't think any band has played that venue more often than the Blue Rodeo.
And I hadn't seen them live for a long time. And I would say that I was amazed at how good they were. You could almost argue they were better, right? And I would say this about like
how long ago was this?
This was about 2 summers ago.
I was there. Is this when the Great Big Sea Guy was opening?
Could have been.
Okay, I was there. Yeah.
Could have been. And they. What was interesting to me...
Alan Doyle, by the way, not just known as the Great Big Sea Guy.
This is true of Skydiggers as well, and is why wouldn't they be better? I mean, they've been playing for, it's not like they are not super expert, and they just kept honing and tightening and expanding, and, to their credit, man, I was blown away by how good they were, and I don't like living in the past too much. I mean, you're kind of forced to sometimes when you talk about music, but it is nice that when you do think about the past like that, it's reaffirming. You're like, damn, it was a great time. It was a great era. And I was really lucky just to kind of touch, some of the figures in that era in very tangential ways, but it was fun.
The name of the Michael Barclay book, we almost had it right, but it's called Have Not Been the Same. The Can Rock Renaissance, 1985 to 1995. Also helping with that book quite a bit, I want to shout out, because Michael Barclay's an FOTM, but also Jason Schneider, who's an FOTM, also helped with that book. And I'm just looking at the cover right now, and all these great bands, like some we've kicked out today, but you mentioned The Pursuit of Happiness. We're now listening to Lowest of the Low.
Yes. It could have been on this too. Love them guys.
I'm disappointed they weren't here.
Sorry,
but
buddy.
I mean, little bands like Grapes of Wrath, for example.
Cowboy Junkies.
Cowboy Junkies, Junk House. You could throw
5440.
5440. Yeah, absolutely. 54. Spirit of the West. Man, we lost John Mann there. That's terrible. But
Cash Brothers.
Yeah. Even Bare Naked Ladies comes out of this scene, right? Like, we didn't even talk about Sloan. You could throw Sloan in there.
Big not much of an oversight. I love Sloan, especially my East Coast roots. Apologies to Sloan.
Because they're going to listen and be upset. So I just want them to... They'll be in the sequel, maybe, if we do this again?
They would be 100%.
This was great. I loved your songs. I loved hearing you talk about the music, and it was great to catch up with you after... shout out to Colin James. I almost had 5 long years, but it's been 4 long years, and hopefully we don't wait another 4 years for your return.
Oh, you won't. Thanks, Mike. This was really fun.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,267th show. You can follow me at 67 or 68. Do you know? I don't want to get that wrong. It is 68, I believe. I'm going to have to redo that whole thing. I'll fix it in post. And that brings us to the end of our 1,268th show. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. Michael, you're at Michael Grange on Twitter.
That's it. Yep.
Follow Michael Grange. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. Don't leave without your GLB. Palma Pasta is at Palma Pasta. Don't leave without your lasagna. Maneris is at Maneris. Throw that speaker in the pile you got there. It's a great speaker. Recycle My Electronics are at EPRA_Canada. And The Moment Lab are at The Moment Lab. And Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH. See you all. I'm just going to check the calendar really quick and real. They don't do this on Sportsnet, but here I am checking out to see who is next on. Okay, interesting. My next guest on Toronto Mic'd is Brad Bradford. So join us on Friday morning for that. And then we have a double header because that evening we will have Toast with Rob Pruce and Bob Willett. And that'll be live at live.torontomic.com at 6:30 p.m. See you all then.